Hello there, and welcome back to week 4 edition of the STL Cards season scrapbook episode of Peace, Love, and Baseball. We are covering the full 4th week of the Major League Baseball season all around the St. Louis Cardinals. So welcome in if it's your first time checking it out. I am K-Bird Tweets here. If you're watching, I have a really hard time pointing to my name, but you can follow me on Twitter. And if you're on the K-Bird Tweets YouTube channel, then you already found me there. Just make sure that you have clicked subscribe, and you will have this episode coming to you every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Central. So we're covering games from Monday, April 22nd through Sunday, April 28th. That's today. If you are listening to the podcast, the audio only, then this pops up in your feed every Monday morning, ready for you to recap the previous week of Cardinals baseball, along with our scrapbook moment of the week. We'll give you Bird's Bird of the Week, very original, I know, and your one and only official vibe check in Major League Baseball is right here, courtesy of me at Peace, Love, and Baseball. So the Cardinals end week 4 at 2 games under 500 at 13-15 after taking 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks at home and 2 of 3 from the Mets on the road. Let's start with the Monday, April 22nd game where we played the Diamondbacks for the second time already this season, but this time at home at Busch Stadium. The Diamondbacks jumped out to an early lead, scoring 2 runs in the second inning and adding another courtesy of Eugenio Suarez in the 5th. Lance Lynn allowed his 3 earned runs in the first 2 innings of the game and then settled in to shut it down through the 5th, allowing a total of 7 hits, 3 walks, and 7 strikeouts. The Cardinals offense showed signs of life in the 6th when Lars Nootbaar drove in Mason Wynn and Michael Ciani. Paul Goldschmidt moved down to the 5th spot in the order. This was the first game that we saw that happen. He took no offense, and he clapped back with a home run to tie the game in the 7th. If you were watching this game, you might remember the other irony of this moment is in his first at-bat in the 5th spot of the order, Paul Goldschmidt came up with the bases loaded. He unfortunately did not make any magic happen then, but it was even sweeter to see him get this moment and this big fly in the 7th. Gormania, Nolan Gorman strikes in the bottom of the 9th to save us from extra innings with a 2-run bomb to right center field, and the Cardinals walk it off to win 5-3. Yeah, remember all the way back at the start of the week, we started the week with a walk-off win. If only we could have ended it the same, but we'll get there. Tuesday, April 23rd versus the Diamondbacks at Busch Stadium. I have written in my notes, LOL. So I think we can agree just to keep this one out of the scrapbook. The Diamondbacks win 14-1. That is all you really need to know. But I will tell you that Mats went 4 1/3, allowing 7 earned runs on 6 hits. Somehow. More earned runs than hits. That's never a good sign. 3 walks, 4 strikeouts, 1 home run. Zach Thompson got lit up, though, for 7 earned runs on 7 hits, allowing 2 home runs. We talked about Zach Thompson allowing home runs in week 1 of the season, actually, in our first ever STL Cards season scrapbook episode. He had allowed 11 home runs in his career coming into this season and about 100 innings of work in 2022 and 2023. But he has already allowed a total of 6 home runs in just 17 innings of work in 2024. He was optioned to Memphis in exchange for John King after this outing on Wednesday. And the 1 run from the Cardinals was on a Wilson Contreras home run. And that's all we need to cover about this game. Moving on to Wednesday, better things ahead. We did see, as I mentioned, Zach Thompson optioned down to Memphis, and one Jordan Walker was also optioned down to Memphis after starting the season off with some pretty consistent, pretty obvious offensive struggles. And the one thing I'll say about that maybe hasn't been talked about a ton yet is that obviously he's made huge strides defensively, and that's great. But if the rest of the Cardinals lineup isn't struggling the way that they have been, does this move for Jordan Walker feel as necessary as it did? I don't know. You let me know what you think. The chat is open, so you can always drop, whether you're listening live, drop a note in the chat for me or drop a comment. Were you surprised to see Jordan Walker go down, or had you seen the writing kind of on the wall and figured that they needed to give him the opportunities to make some adjustments, whether it be mental? I think we've seen clearly some really physical stuff that he'll likely be working on, some specifics, but it will be interesting to see just how long it is until we see him back up. That roster move was in exchange for Jose Fermin, who has just been tearing it up in Memphis. So we love to see that. It's good to have his energy and his fun attitude back on the team while Jordan gets some work in Memphis. Okay, good stuff here. Alert. Circle this day in red because the Cardinals win their first series finale of the season to take the series from the Diamondbacks. Kyle Gibson went head-to-head with Jordan Montgomery in the start of the season. And the Cardinals front office were the real winners today because Gibson got himself out of some serious trouble early. He had bases loaded, no outs in the first. And the only run he allowed in his entire outing was on a sacrifice fly in this first inning. And he went on to win the game for himself and the Cardinals. Gibson went 6 innings, allowing 5 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts versus Jay Money's 7 innings, allowing 7 hits, 3 runs, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts. The first run that Jordan Montgomery would allow did not come into the 6th inning, when Nolan Arenado drove in B. Downey and moved Wilson to third. Then things just, they went awry as they would need to go. A wild pitch from Jay Money allowed Wilson Contreras to come home for the Cardinals to take the lead, 2-1. Nolan Gorman would come through yet again in the 7th to drive in Mason Wynn, who scored from first, by the way, love to see it, to make it 3-1. And Newt Barr gave us insurance in the 8th with a double that scored both Nato and Goldy for a final score of 5-1 Cardinals over Diamondbacks. That might have been my favorite game this week. I don't know. Hard to say. It was an off day on Thursday, but Friday was a pretty good game too. Last week we talked about how Miles Mikolas bump days are not always a vibe, but he hurt us because he was ready and he showed up on Friday the 26th. Miles Mikolas and the Cardinals win it 4-2 at Citi Field versus the Mets. Mikolas was locked in for his 5 2/3 of 7-hit, 2-run baseball, no walks, which is typical, always good to see from Mikolas, and 5 strikeouts help him keep runs off the board. And while Tomas Nido, he's filling in behind the plate for Francisco Alvarez for the Mets, who is out with a thumb injury. So he's not even like their starting or close to starting catcher, but he seemed like he had Miles Mikolas' number with a home run and a double. He limited the majority of the Mets offense other than Nido to enough for the Cardinals to actually back him up with some run support. Alec Burleson got the party started early with a Burly Bomb to center field, scoring Arenado and Goldschmidt. And Wilson Contreras, you keep hearing that name in these offensive highlights, don't you? He had his own big fly in the top of the 3rd to add the 4th run on for the Redbirds. Thanks to the shutdown bullpen of Romero, Kittredge, and Helsley. What a trio. The Cardinals head on to win it and held on to win it and started things off strong on the East Coast this season. Saturday, April 27th, it's a Sonny Gray day. Sonny Gray goes 6 innings, allowing 4 hits and 4 runs. Only 1 of those runs was earned, and that drove no one more insane than Sonny Gray himself. Gray was vocal about his frustration of the 3 walks that he allowed that ultimately played a big part in the final score, but he was still overall the Sonny Gray that we're coming to know and love, striking out 9 New York Metropolitans. In his 92 pitches, he threw 58 for strikes. So it does seem like he was struggling with command more than usual, but it only shows how good his stuff is that even when he's off, he is able to work with it at that level. One of those things where you're like, yeah, you at 70% is better than a hell of a whole lot of guys at 100%. That's kind of how I felt about Sonny Gray's outing yesterday. The Cardinals offense, friends and fans, are the Birds alive? They were really starting to more than just chirp here against Adrian Hauser and the Mets. Arenado and Goldy picked up RBIs after Downey and Wilson got on base, and Mason drove in Goldy to make it a quick, snappy 4-run lead in the first. Nolan drove in Nolan in the 3rd. Arenado scored from first base on a double by Gorman, who then ultimately advanced to third on the throw to the plate, which was nowhere near in time, even for our sweet, sweet slow legs Arenado. The Cardinals picked up their sixth run unearned on a balk that brought Goldschmidt home, and the only Cardinals starters without a hit in this game were Nootbaar and Siani. I do not know for a fact. That's something I should have looked up. If that's like the most players, like total 7 players, 7 starters got hits. All right. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm liking what I'm hearing about that. RBIs were well balanced throughout as well. Donovan sack fly in the 8th as the to top off the Cardinals' runs. Arenado, Burleson, Gorman, and Wynn each snagging an RBI, along with Goldy, who had 2 RBIs on the day. The Mets did not get on the board until the 5th inning when Nimmo got to Gray for an RBI single to drive in 2, and Pete Alonso did what you knew Pete Alonso was going to do against the Cardinals, okay? Like, he was one away from home run number 200, and he hit career home run number 200. And he did it off of Sonny Gray. Lucky for him. Anyway, Alonso scored the only earned run of the game from Gray. Our trusty trio of JoJo, Kittredge, and Helsley kept the Mets at bay again for a 7-4 Red Bird winner. Was this your favorite game of the week? Did you like this one over the J Money Gibson matchup? Let me know. I'm having a hard time deciding. Let's wrap it up with Sunday, April 28th. Today, the Cardinals came into the day with a chance to make it a 500 record with Lance Lynn back on the mound. Lynn went 5 innings. He allowed 5 hits, 1 run, 3 walks, and 3 strikeouts. Brendan Donovan had a number of spectacular catches in the outfield that surely aided in Lynn's performance today. The only Cardinals offense to speak of, though, came when Mason Wynn hit a triple to lead off the 5th. He was driven in by a Siani sacrifice bunt. And in fact, all bats were relatively quiet throughout this entire game on both sides until Francisco Lindor homered off of Lynn to lead off the bottom of the 6th and tied the game at 1. We did see another exciting outing under pressure from Ryan Fernandez, not just a great mustache, Ryan Fernandez. He struck out 3 in his 2 scoreless innings of work. And we got some free baseball, extra innings as the Mets and the Cardinals duked it out into the 11th before Donovan would single to score ghost runner Michael Siani. Now, our current center fielder, Siani, may have scored, but it was old friend Harrison Bader who drove in the tying run against Matthew Liberatore in the home half of the 11th. Libby dealt one just a little too close to the sun for Mark Vientos, and he hit a 2-run walk-off home run, and the Mets won the series finale 4-2. Not an ill-played baseball game by the Cardinals is what I feel good enough about, even though we weren't able to get our first, series sweep of the season and get to 500. Those would have been like some nice boxes to check, but overall, I still feel pretty good, and we're going to get there. Time to move on to our scrapbook moment of the week. Now, I put this poll out every Sunday, a few hours before we do this episode, and thanks to your votes, we have designated one moment that we are going to take some extra pictures of and just tape them up and make them look pretty, maybe some hearts, some stars, stickers, and remember this moment forever, no matter where the season takes us. This week's scrapbook moment of the week is Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Gorman heating up. It's getting a little toasty in here, Cardinals fans. In this week's games, Goldschmidt was 8 for 23 with 8 hits, including, obviously 8 hits, 8 for 23. He had 2 doubles and a home run of those 8 hits. He scored 6 runs, 3 RBIs. He walked twice. He still had 9 strikeouts, which is certainly more than we're used to seeing from Goldie. And he's still working some stuff out. Timing is not fully there, but looking significantly different than the player that we were starting to get maybe a little worried about. Nolan Gorman was 6 for 20 with 2 doubles, a home run, 4 RBIs, 2 runs scored, a walk, and 5 strikeouts. Looking good for Norm. Expect that to continue. And I've been high on Norm from the start, and I never really doubted Goldie, but I was starting to understand, and we've talked about that in the last couple of weeks of, where the red flags were at. I'm not going to turn a blind eye. It surely was frustrating. And these are like the two big pieces, I think, particularly from a power perspective, along with Nolan Arenado and Wilson Contreras, that have to be on par. Like they have to be contributing in at least half of the games every week if this team is going to get anywhere near the position that we'd like to see them in. So scrapbook moment of the week, tape it up, maybe like put a little kissy face next to it, because this is one that we're going to want to remember. And hopefully we'll look back on it even more fondly. This week's Bird of the Week, very highly anticipated segment where we get to pick one player from the Birds that Bird is going to feature and just give a little extra love to. There's lots of highlights every week. As we said, lots of good moments. There was a Big Burly Bomb. There was some great defense as well as that consistent on base percentage from Brendan Donovan. I love seeing Wilson Contreras leading this team just in vibes and offense and making great adjustments behind the plate. But this week's Bird of the Week has to go to none other than Kyle Gibson, friends and fans. I told you that Kyle Gibson versus J-Money and the D-backs, that might have been my favorite game of the week. And I was really sad. I was having a hard time in my heart watching Jordan Montgomery pitch against the Cardinals, because even though I certainly don't think, like, I have no illusions of grandeur of like who Jordan Montgomery is as a pitcher, I just think he makes a lot of sense for the Cardinals. And I understand their like lack of willingness to invest in him in the level at which they had to, especially given his postseason. That certainly elevated his value, but like, I get it, but he just seemed like he was a fit. And so we'll see. He's probably going to be a free agent again next season. So wait to see. But Kyle Gibson is who we're talking about now, because he went 6 innings. He allowed 5 hits, just 1 earned run. And we talked about that 1 earned run being on a sacrifice fly with the bases loaded, no outs in the first inning. And that dude, he got out of it. And that is not even close to the first time this season, in this young season, that we have seen Kyle Gibson get out of situations like that. So I had to look a little deeper into it. He is currently outplaying his expected weighted on base average and his ERA, where he is currently in the bottom 10% of the league. And that tells us that he is likely outperforming long-term results. But this is part of why I wanted to feature Gibson this week, because this doesn't surprise me at all. I don't think it surprises Cardinals fans to hear me say that, because watching him pitch is not at all like watching Sonny Gray or Lance Lynn or even Jordan Montgomery or Jose Quintana, who I hated having to face today too, or Miles Michaelis even. Like, you feel like you are watching him walk that tightrope most of the time, maybe getting away with things here and there. And that's certainly what these expected statistics are telling us. But I found his post-game interview after this start to be really insightful to his approach and how he manages to outperform expected stats. At this point, we can say, consistently, he's had enough starts that it's not showing yet that he's actually going to fall to those expected stats. And it will be really interesting to circle back on as the season rolls on. He spoke about how he finds those big moments of turnaround and getting out of jams by remembering that he is only 1 pitch away from getting out of it, particularly with the defensive strength behind him on this team. He is able to take it 1 pitch at a time. And as he was speaking about this, I was like, that is exactly what he's doing. And that's why it feels like he's walking the tightrope, because he's literally taking 1 step at a time. Just get the next step. Just stay balanced. Just stay connected. So the way that he spoke about it made me reconsider his approach and just overall the level of success that he has found throughout his career with less than plus stuff. We've talked about this in weeks previous as well. But his elite mental grasp on the game is what makes him as good of a major league pitcher as he is on paper. Because at the end of the day, your expected statistics are still expected. And if you can outperform them like Kyle Gibson is doing, and Lance Lynn is as well, maybe that's what the Cardinals are taking a chance on. But that was cool. Check out that post-game interview if you missed it. Let's wrap up this week's STL Cards Season Scrapbook Edition with the one official vibe check in all of Major League Baseball. I know what you're thinking. What are you feeling, Kelsey? What's the read? What is it? Tell me. Where are we at on the vibe scale? Because things are changing. Corners are turning. Things are happening. And then games like today happen. But like I said, I don't think there was like any big red flags, anything to be too super upset about today. And if you have, I shouldn't invite this, but if you have particular things that you were upset about today, we all can look at the bullpen usage and blah, 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 and things like that. But there was nothing of concern that this was like a bad baseball game played by either team today. And that's kind of that's the vibe that I got. And that's what this is about. Okay. So this week, the official vibe check and read for the St. Louis Cardinals is rising from the ashes vibes. Okay. We got to rise from the ashes, right? Because last season burned to the freaking ground. We ended in dark, deep, seedy, thick ashes. And a lot of this season, I think, has been clouded by the remnants, the scars, looking back, being afraid of that completely unforeseen tragedy that left us in ashes last season. And we're starting to see some of these guys, and I hope some of the fans as well, come out of that, stand up, brush themselves off, and say, you know what? Maybe it really is a new season. And while we're still going to have our trials and tribulations, there are certainly things that we have a handle on that we didn't last season that we have to take stock in and might just put us in a different position, hopefully a different position than a 91 loss team, right? That's the real goal here. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things that are different from this week to last week that really point to this rising from the ashes. There were 35 runners left on base in the 6 games this week, as opposed to 45 last week. There were 45 runners left on base last week. 35, probably still not great, but it's significantly less than 45. The Cardinals batted as a team 200 with runners in scoring position. Sure, not ideal, but last week they batted 147. We're not thriving from the ashes. We're simply rising. And 200 over 147, rising. Still dusting off, The guys who have been hot, Wynn, Donnie, Wilson, they are staying consistent, but we are starting to get more production from Goldy, Gorman, Burleson. Newt and Nato aren't cause for concern, but I imagine if they can get amped and have more consistent production as well, we'll just all continue to rise. And we are far enough into the season that I owe this pitching staff an apology. I really do. I owe the Cardinals pitching staff an apology. And I would be truly thrilled if we get the results from them that we have gotten thus far throughout the season. Because while it might be mediocre, just above mediocre, depending on what you're looking at exactly, the results speak for themselves. And it is working out significantly better so far than what I thought. And what I thought was in that very first game of the season at Dodger Stadium, when, Miles Michaelis gave up 7 runs, and I don't know, it was just like, it was a total loss, like from inning 2. I don't even remember it specifically because, again, it was not a scrapbook moment of the week. I'm not hanging on to it, but you know what I'm talking about. I felt like, well, this is just going exactly how I thought it was going to go, and I can hope all I want, and I can be positive all I want, but I saw this writing on the wall, and I really thought I knew that there was going to be some serious cause for concern, and these old dogs have proved me wrong, and I could not be more thrilled to say that. So we'll end on that note that not only are these, 35, 36, 37-year-old pitchers rising from the ashes this season, they are bringing that offense up to par with them. We can only hope. Keep it going, Cardinals. Hey, I will be here again next Sunday at 7 p.m. Central. And if you can't join in live, you can listen in your podcast feed. Just make sure you're following Peace, Love, and Baseball. You'll get your weekly episodes on Tuesday. We got a good one coming for you this week, a little bit of a crossover episode. But here on Sunday nights and then Monday mornings in your podcast feed is where we talk all Cardinals all the time. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and I look forward to catching up with you again and the St. Louis Cardinals next week.